my CFO is doing math on his fingers.
He was counting people.
It's just double checking.
I just had to check his math real quick. It looks good to me.
There you go, seal of approval.
So this is really Mike's presentation tonight, so I'll just wanted to throw in that joke and then pass it on to him. So with that, Mike.
Thank you. So James covered everything I was going to present, so move to approve. Okay, so
It's just a workshop.
I was really envious of James presenting all the numbers, but then I realized I've got a lot of numbers too, so we're ready to go. First,
Check your math.
yeah, first we are here for the 2025 Prop 218 cost of service study. So if you're in the wrong room, please get up and exit through the back doors. Jason, stay where you are.
He was ready to roll.
Yep. Okay, so real quick, the agenda for tonight. So we'll go over the summary of proposed changes. General Manager Campbell already went over the majority of the big things on there. So we'll go over, I'll try to make as interesting as possible the legal and strategic framework, some of the cost alignments and drivers that are affecting these rates, our rate structure and customer impacts, and then the wholesale to retail comparison, as well as then the closing and the next steps. So real quick, the summary of proposed changes. All of the things that we've done for these rate studies are compliant with Prop 218, so they ensure proportionality, transparency, and defensibility. As James mentioned, about 75 cents of the operating costs are driven by external wholesale agencies, and I wanted to kind of show a graphic, that'll be on the next slide, sorry. And then the average single-family residence, and we'll go over what that entails, is proposed to go up from $111 to about $126, a 13.2% adjustment. And at the cost of service study, and I can't emphasize this enough, I'll go through this and probably say it about 3 times during the presentation. They set the maximum rates and annual pass-through caps. Right now, we're proposing for the annual pass-through caps is 28% for like the Water Authority and SDG&E, and for our internal costs, about 8%. So some of the key definitions or terms. Well, Prop 218, it's the California constitutional requirement that rates cannot exceed the proportional cost. So if I mentioned the COSS is the cost of service study, it's really what we use to allocate all these costs to all the different cost drivers and components. Average single-family residence, I use that term a lot. What we're saying is that the average single-family residence is defined as a single-family residence with a 5/8" meter that uses 13 units per month. That's kind of like an industry standard when we go across the 22 agencies now. Some people use 12 units a month, some use 13, we use 13, and we want to stay consistent so that each year we can compare apples to apples on that. And with the Prop 218, I won't get into the legal too much of it, I'll kind of defer on that, but we give the ability for the customer to have a written protest that just says, hey, I'm opposed to these rates, versus a legal objection, which I believe is new this time around for us. And they have to specify that we are not in compliance with something in Prop 218. So they can't just say, I don't like your rates are too high. They have to specify exactly what it is that we are non-compliance in. So here's the exciting part. So the Prop 218 was enacted in 1996, and it regulates the taxation and assessments. Voter approval, in this case, the ability to protest. Property-related fee, it's got to be based on the cost of providing the proportional cost, cannot exceed the proportional cost. You have to have a noticing requirement of at least 45 days. We've actually noticed, I believe, 54 days in advance to give us a little bit of time on the back end. And it just limits the power of local governments to just raise taxes on the customers. So a quick timeline. This actually started back in, well, probably a year ago, where we were looking at our current costs and our current rate. And because our current Prop 218 limitations, we can only raise rates up to 6.5%. That's what we put as our maximum in our current study. That covers us now. And as James was mentioning, the costs that are being passed on to us from the Water Authority are going into double digits. So there was a need to realign our costs. So we brought to the P3 committee the Prop 218 notice, which was mailed out to all of our customers. And that really started that 45-day notice period. We went on the 16th, we did an update to the Finance Committee, and I'm actually glad that Director Brown was actually there as a customer at the time, because she was able to hear some of this stuff, get a little background on that. So we're here today for the board workshop, and I will be asking you later on to accept the cost of service study and to affirm the public hearing on October 15th. The legal objection deadline is October 8th, so that would give us 7 days before the public hearing to kind of do a little bit of research and respond to those legal objections. So again, the hearing that I mentioned, it would be on the 15th to hopefully adopt rates, and then the new rates would be effective on January 1st, 2026. And the new study, we are covering, proposing for 4 years, it would cover calendar years 2026 through 2029. So real quick, the cost of service study process, it really begins with the financial planning, our budget. So we have a financial strategy adopted in the budget, and some of the guidelines are to have adequate cash reserves or debt service coverage ratio. From that budget, we derive what's called the revenue requirement. That's really the driving factor that gets fed into our cost of service study to determine rates. So the cost of service study then is actually trying to allocate those costs equitably to all of our different customers. And we want to make sure it's all based on foundation for Prop 218 compliance. And then with that, it's the rate design. We do our rate model that spits out all these numbers. Again, in compliance with Prop 218, as I mentioned, the 4-year structure. What I also want to mention is, if approved on October 15th, that'll approve rates for January of 2026. Each subsequent year, we'll still have to come back to the board, even though we have these pass-throughs in, we still have to come back to the board at least 30 days before rates are adopted, and you would have to approve them. It's not another public hearing, but we do require board approval for that. So what is the cost of service study? As I mentioned, it aligns the revenue with the demands based on each customer group. So it makes sure that there's no cross subsidies. We can't have one group, have a discount, for example, on the backs of someone else. And then we do allocate costs based on the fixed or the ready to serve portion, and the variable or the commodity charge. That's that per unit charge. So why are we here? I kind of told you our limitations with our current Prop 218 is that we can't pass through more than 6.5% from the Water Authority. And the rates from the Water Authority have gone up double digits in some years. So that's that 75% that James was mentioning earlier with both the Water Authority and SDG&E. They've had double-digit increases in recent years. Now, they say a picture is worth, I'll say a picture is worth 2,000 words, and normally it's 1,000 words, but inflation. So the other 25% James alluded to, it covers our capital investment needs, and again, that is for repair and replacement of existing infrastructure. And then our operating budget, so it's our ongoing cost to sustain our core services. So the rate proposal, 4 years. There's the rate guardrails, which sets the maximum rates. Again, the pass-through from Water Authority and San Diego Gas and Electric would be 28% per year, and internal costs are 8% a year. Again, maximum.
So just a question on that. So hypothetically, then, if we adopt this 218, then we could raise the rates by 36%? Would you add those two together?
No, it's not. It's the 70. Remember, it's 75% of Water Authority, so it'd be 75% of 28%, which is 21%. I'm going to get into a lot of geeky numbers here, and then 25% of it is at 8%, which is 2%. So 21 plus 2, maximum would be 23
Okay, thanks.
Over that 4-year period.
each year.
Each year.
Each
Each year.
So
And
this
I'll
is
show
just
you-
saying like the max per year.
This is
that
the
would be-
max per year.
It was previously 6.5%.
Correct.
Okay.
And I'll show you an example of that with the current rates that we're proposing. And again, we can't exceed the cost of providing the service. So if the Water Authority was 12% next year and our internal costs were 6%, we would take this, 75% of X, 25% of Y, and that would be what I would come back to you next year for a proposal.
Yeah, and just to be clear, just to reiterate again, these are the maximum settings, so what our actual costs are, what the actual rate that we get from Water Authority is what we'll be analyzing, and every year the board will get a presentation, and we'll have to adopt the rate before it passes, when we have to do that at least 30 days before. So every year, most likely in the fall, staff is gonna come back and say, this is the new 2027 rate from the Water Authority, this is what our internal costs are, here's the new proposed rate.
We just don't have to do a new 218.
Nope.
So it's also important to mention that the reason that we have,
Yeah, sorry,
so the reason we actually have caps is we are required to per Prop 218. So we have to have a maximum in there. It's the only reason why we do. We've asked if we can just pass through actual costs, but we actually have to state a maximum. So we just wanted to state a maximum that we are hoping is sufficient to cover costs for the next 4 years.
And as we mentioned, it requires board adoption each year, at least 30 days prior to the rate increase. So let me walk you through the example bill real quick. So as we've mentioned, the current customer, the average single-family residence, 13 units of water, their bill would be $111.49 as of today. With the new rate increase, it would go to $126.22, almost $15 increase or 13.2%. I thought, how can I slice this and dice this a little bit differently to give you a different perspective? And I was actually shocked with the results of this. So what this slide is showing is the cost component breakdown between what Vallecito's portion of the water bill is versus the pass-through amounts from the Water Authority. So currently that $111 bill, about $25.50 of it is our cost, our internal cost being passed through to the customer. And almost $86 is the Water Authority's portion. The next slide is the one that really was an aha moment for me. With the proposal to go from 111 to 126, the really shocking part is, look at the VWD column. The VWD portion is actually going down about $2. And I'll just bring in the math here. It's going down $2.09, while the Water Authority's portion is going up $16.82. So you might ask yourself, or ask me, why? How does that make sense? I'll go over that in a second. So the VWD's portion is actually going down 8.2%, with the Water Authority going up 19.6%. And again, that gets you the melded 13.2% overall. So some of the reasons why the VWD portion is going down is now that we're able to pass through all of Water Authority's costs, we don't have to carry that burden. The other reason, and I believe General Manager Campbell mentioned, was the discretionary revenue that we have the ability to offset some of these costs. Discretionary revenue would include things like property tax, redevelopment revenue, and there's some other things like cell site revenue and things like that. Those we have discretion to do, and we've chosen in this cost of service study to offset some of the costs for Tier 1 and Tier 2, and I'll show you an example of that in a minute. So here's where we were talking about the caps. So that if this was next year, for example, and these were the actual costs that came through duplicating the cost for this year, the cap for the Water Authority is 28%. The actual amount is 19.6%. So we wouldn't pass through 28%, we'd pass through the 19.6. And again, 75% of that. Don't want to get too geeky on that. And again, the cap for the internal is proposed to be 8%. But right now, we're actually proposing to decrease our portion 8.2%. So that's how the caps would work. They are just a maximum amount. And again, as Wes mentioned, it's because we have to put in a maximum amount in there.
And just to reiterate this, when Mike first showed me this reduction, I was pleasantly shocked myself. And working through the reasons why, and also some of it was, I showed in the tactical plan presentation, those ongoing savings, the turnaround in budget concerns, the savings that we were seeing on the little things that have added up along with increased revenue sources. All those little things add up, and we're actually seeing real results of how that affects our customers.
And so one of those savings, which we mentioned in the Finance Committee a couple of weeks ago, was the solar savings. We mentioned solar a little bit earlier. Just for example, I believe the 5 year savings of that is about $491,000. That gets rolled into customer rates and that helps stabilize and offset some of the impacts. So again, I just want to kind of reiterate what's the cost attribution breakdown of what's driving that 13.2%. So the top portion here is the San Diego County Water Authority, and I broke it down between their commodity and their rated to serve. Their commodity rate that affects us going up from $5.36 to about $6.29, 93-cent per unit increase, or 17.4%. And those, where the red lines are, those are per unit cost, the 748 gallons. Their ready to serve is going from 1631 to 2104, about a 29% increase. And I don't know if you recall from last year, we mentioned that the Water Authority is now shifting some of their burden of costs from their commodity into ready to serve. That's another reason why we wanted to do this combined 28%, is in this example, with the old Prop 218, we would only be able to raise the rates 6.5%, even though they're 17.5 and 29. So there is a definite need for that. And again, to help explain why our portion is going down, that property tax and RDA revenue that we mentioned, right now in our current rates, it's offsetting tier 1 costs by about 76 cents per unit, I'm sorry. That means we're actually selling the water for less than it costs us to produce by backfilling it with that revenue from property tax and RDA. For 2026, we're proposing to increase that credit, which is a good thing, another 32 cents, so $1.08. So then our ready to serve portion would actually go up from $25.41 to about $26, a 2.5-ish% increase. Oops. So the key takeaways is that the pass-throughs are the driving, SCCWA, pass-throughs are the driving factor of the majority of this increase. While VWD's portion is stable or declining, the total bill increases would be about 13.2%, and the rate structure remains compliant, equitable, and financially sustainable. So then I wanted to do kind of a short history of the wholesale cost component versus the cost that we're passing on to our customer. So this is a 4-year showing of the cost per acre foot. And as you can see in fiscal year 20, at the top line, first of all, is the percentage of the budget. And I've been mentioning in all my previous budget presentations to you how the costs from Water Authority are increasing every year. It was 71.9%, now it's about 74.8%. The cost per acre foot is the next row, from 2261 in fiscal year 23 to 3039 this current coming year. So you'd see that the increases for those 3-year periods is an average increase of 10.4%. That's on the purchased water that we buy. So on to our customer. In fiscal year 23, the average cost was about $98.70, and as we mentioned, going up to $126.22 for an average annual increase of 8.5%. So the 26 customer bill increase of 13.2% is really realigning some of the retail rates with the underlying cost pressures, and also kind of catching up from that prior rate cap constraints. And just to show it in graphical form, this is the cumulative increase from those numbers above. So the blue line is the costs that were passed on to us from the Water Authority. The 3-year combined is 34.4%, and our customer increase is about a little under 28%. So we talked about the average single-family residence. They're not our only customers. I wanted to bring in our entire rate structure here. So the top portion is our commodity cost for tier 1s, tier 2, tier 3. And the average increase is right around 13%, from 10.87 to 13.83. So roughly in the neighborhood of 13% overall. The bottom portion is our ready to serve portion, and it also is in the same rate range of about 10 to 13%. And that's why our average single family residence is going to go up about 13%. So what this is really saying, in other cost studies that we've done, it might not be so equitable because of the cost drivers. It might be that irrigation might go up 18%, or different size meter might go up 2%. This one is actually pretty equitable all across the board. So for the first time, we're actually including pump zones with the cost of service study. So when you approve, if hopefully you approve rates on the 15th in 2 weeks, you'll also be approving the pump zone rate charges. So again, the pump zone charges are the aim to strive to hit 95% of the SDG&E costs for each of the zones. And this proposal increases the rates by about 12 to 13% again, which is the cost increase from SDG&E. So this is the cost per zone per unit of water.
And just as a reminder, we got about 3,000 out of our 22,000+ customers, so about 3,000 are in the pump zone. And this only captures our SDG&E costs of them. It doesn't capture our normal operations, maintenance, and replacement of the pump station. So this is just for SDG&E portion of operating the pump station.
So in summary, the proposed rates meet all the requirements under Prop 218. The driving factor is external wholesale costs of about 75%. The average single-family residence bill will increase from $111 to about $126. The cost of service study would be a 4-year with the maximum caps, again, 28% for external, which is basically the Water Authority and SDG&E, and 8% internal. And just as a reiteration that the retail rates have lagged behind the wholesale increases, and this proposal will really realign them to ensure long-term fiscal stability. This kind of repeats a lot of what was in my summary, but the adjustments reflect the disciplined internal cost control and transparent planning. The rates remain capped and structured to protect affordability while also ensuring that we have service reliability. And the district does remain committed to long-term financial stability and public accountability. And in future rate actions will continue to be grounded in the cost of service principles and legal compliance. So with that, I will be asking for acceptance of the cost of service study that was dated August 21st, 2025, and also to affirm the public hearing scheduled for October 15th, 2025. And again, this is just the calendar that I showed earlier. And at this point, I'm open to any questions or discussion from the board.
Why, thank you, Mike. And Wes and James, that's a lot of information.
Yes, it is.
And it's late, and I have a lot of questions, darn it. No, but before I ask a couple, any questions, comments? Yes.
Just an excellent presentation, excellent. I mean, that gives us everything we should need to know. And just to give you, I just heard on the news yesterday, San Diego is going to raise their rates 60% over the next 3 years.
Yeah, and if you remember the last presentation I brought to the board, I actually showed my own personal Water Authority bill. I'm City of San Diego resident. And I now have 3 bills, they bill bi-monthly, 3 bills in a row. Each bill, the rates increased. So in 2 months it increased, and 2 months later it increased, and now they're doing a 62%, I believe, over
Yeah.
4 years.
Yeah.
Which actually the board delayed until October 28th, I believe.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Move to San Marcos.
Yeah, I used to live here.
Any other comments?
No.
Questions? Yeah.
Yeah, I'd just like to give a shout out to Wes and Mike and the finance team. We as a finance committee have heard many presentations for the budget process and now the rate process, and so we've been on board with it as well. Thank you.
Yes. So just a couple clarifying questions, and they're not long, just so I know. First, that Lisa, who helped you with your PowerPoint? Lisa?
Lisa, all Lisa.
Man, give her, yeah, that's a shout out to her. That was great. Our current, is it a 4-year, our current 218?
It is a 5-year, and it would normally expire December 31st of 2026. If we don't approve this in 2 weeks, we would revert back to our current 5-year one, which would be a 6.5% cap, which would really tie our hands.
So that was approved 4 years ago?
4-ish years ago,
At caps of,
6.5%
and
and 4%.
6.5 and 4.
And at the time, just to backtrack a little bit, at the time we did that back in 2020, I think it was 2020, the previous rates increases from the Water Authority were 4%, 4.4%, 5%. Nothing even hit 6%. So we're thinking, oh, 6.5%, we're good. And
Gotcha.
unfortunately, a lot of things happened.
So we're proposing a 13.2. What have been our increases over, say, the last 8 years? Is there able, I know it's a lot to ask, but
Yeah,
about
so
the
I know
same?
over the last 4, if we do this one, it would be that 8 point, whatever it was. But I'll get you the exact number, but it'd probably be around the 6.5 to 7%.
Yeah.
Each
It's like-
year?
Average per
Average.
year. I can get you exact,
Average per year over the
Yeah.
last 5 years, about 6.5%.
yeah, I can get you the
Okay,
actual amounts.
No, that's, I just wanted average.
It's probably even less because
Yeah.
during COVID, many agencies, including the water authorities, held back rate increases and did a 0% rate increases. And then there's a year that they only did a 1 or 2% rate increase.
Right.
That kind of, with the water authority, that kind of put them behind the 8 ball because then that was immediately followed by 2 very wet winters, which they used up their literal rainy day fund in those COVID years, so.
Gotcha, okay. And then just you said something about definition of groups, not falling on, what's the
So-
definition of a group?
A lot of agencies will use customer classics, for example, irrigation versus multifamily versus single family, commercial, industrial. We use it by meter size. So when we talk about groups, we'll charge by meter size. So we identify all 5 HH customers as basically the same. They get the same tier allotment, the same tier cost.
Gotcha. Thank you. So my only concern is question, and I know this might be an odd one, we're proposing a 28 cap and an 8. And why, how did you determine those numbers? How did we come up with those 28 and 8? I mean, to be honest, why don't we put a 38 and a 16 so we don't have to do a cost? Because we're not gonna go above that. Again, that's just a directive. We're only gonna charge a basic pass-through rate.
So there's several things. So the water authority at the time when we're looking at it was looking at, close to 25, 18%, 20%, and they're also looking at almost 25 to 30% on their commodity rate. And obviously we knew they had a long road. We didn't know where the water authority was going to go, but City of Carlsbad, Santa Fe Irrigation District, and some other agencies recently adopted a 30% pass-through. Other agencies and GMs were talking about doing roughly around 38% pass-through on the cap. And we ended up with 28 as a suggestion from our president, President Pennick, at the finance committee meeting. Said, you know what, or maybe it was P3, sorry, 28. 28 sounds better than 30. So that's how we ended up there, sir.
When I'm getting old.
Sorry, it was a while ago though. So.
Well, that's interesting how you take my recommendations. I just thought I threw those out. It's good to know you listen.
Well, but by the time you did that, shortly after, the water authority started settling on their rates, so we knew that 28 would more than cover us for this year. But we didn't know, because what the water authority has done is they've reduced the upcoming 2026 rates with an assumption that they're going to sell more water or be more profitable in 2027. So that's very dangerous. All the general managers kind of just held our breath when we heard that. But that's kind of what they had to do to pass it. So the current rates from the water authority that's been adopted for 2026 has an assumption that in 2027, things will be better, whether they sell more water or whatever it is, that they could basically use some of the assumed profits from 2027. They basically borrowing from Peter to pay Paul. And it may not be that quite dramatic, but there's a little bit of assumption in there. So we were still concerned that next year, the 2027 rate from the water authority can be significant.
Yeah, so we had initially proposed 30%, but we felt after our presentation that the 28% was a well-informed recommendation.
Thank you.
I like that 28 number now.
May I ask a question?
Yes, and that's all my questions, so thank you, yes.
So if the board passes this tonight,
We wouldn't be passing it tonight. It's just a recommendation to approve it on the 15th.
on the 15th?
Yes.
Okay. So at the next meeting, it becomes approved. And if there is no one in the public hearing or anybody from the public to be here to know what's going on, how will we let everybody know?
So first, what I should have mentioned is, and I want Kirsten to correct me if the numbers have updated. So far, We mailed out the Prop 218 about 4 weeks ago, and as of last count that I knew, we had 3 letters of protest. Is that still correct? Yes. 3 protests and no legal challenges. So let me just tell you technically what would need to happen. In 2 weeks, we would need for the board to not be able to vote on it, we would need 50% plus 1 objections. So that would be 11,000-ish, and we have 3, so we're almost there.
And if the board at the public hearing and after close of the public hearing adopts the new cost of service study in the 218, then staff would do the appropriate notification to all of our customers that this action has happened. And then these rates will be in effect come January 2026, unless the board action is otherwise, but that's what's being proposed.
Yeah, I understand. I'm just trying to think about if nobody shows up and we don't say anything at the January meeting, you're going to see a lot of people here saying,
We'll
what
put it-
happened?
Yeah, we'll put an insert, either an insert in the bill or a separate mailer. Plus, we'll make sure that it gets on our website, and things like that too.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, discussion, comments? So with that, going on, may I have a motion to, 1, accept the cost of service study dated August 21, 2025, and 2, affirm the public hearing scheduled for October 15th, 2025, regular board meeting.
Can we make a motion on both of them together? Okay.
That's right, that's
so-
right, 1 and 2 together.
So moved on 1 and 2.
Thank you.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Please vote. Motion passes, and we look forward to 2 weeks from today. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Great
Great job.
presentation
Thank
across the
you.
board.
Thank you, guys.
Moving on to, that's the end of the action items. Moving on to general manager report.